The Stellar Recovery Unit prided themselves on their methodical approach. Ancient artifacts were their specialty. The abandoned remains of vanished civilizations, scattered throughout the Helios expanse, represented potential fortunes waiting to be claimed. Commander Thax, a veteran Crustian with countless salvage missions to his name, understood that profit awaited those willing to engage in challenging work. Today, however, his team encountered something far more significant than mere scrap metal. By the Cosmos crackled his communication device with the characteristic buzz of avian speech. His second-in-command Merrick's voice trembled with astonishment. Thax's compound eyes narrowed with concern. Merrick never expressed such surprise during recovery operations. "What discovery has you so agitated, Second?" he demanded into the communicator, the hum of his exoskeleton filling the cramped confines of the recovery vessel. "Commander, you must witness this yourself in Quadrant Epsilon," Merrick replied, urgency evident in his tone that caused Thax's mouthparts to twitch nervously. The derelict Terran battleship Poseidon hung suspended in the emptiness of space like a solidified nightmare. Its hull was damaged and scarred, remnants of a conflict so ancient it had vanished even from the collective archives of the Crustian stellar records. Terrans were peculiar beings, short-lived, unpredictable, a perplexing combination of brutality and ingenious innovation. They were extinct now, eliminated ages ago during their final courageous stand against the Coalition. "Possibly an ancient warship, Second," Thax remarked, examining the display before him. Ancient Terran vessels were remarkably resilient. Some even contained caches of primitive yet valuable technology. Standard protocol showed. "It's not the vessel, Commander," Merrick interrupted, his voice hushed. "It's the biological signature." Biological signature. The phrase sent an unsettling sensation through Thax's carapace. The Poseidon should have been nothing more than a relic, not a functioning vessel. Terran. Negative. A solitary reading, definitely mammalian. Faint but present. Thax's exoskeleton creaked as he shifted his weight. A living Terran represented a cosmic-scale complication. The agreements that concluded their conflict were predicated on the certainty of their extinction. Any indication of their survival within the Coalition they now belonged to would collapse catastrophically. "Secure the area," Thax ordered, mandibles working frantically. "Alert headquarters. We require an investigation team immediately." "With all respect, Commander," Merrick's voice resonated in Thax's hearing organ. "An investigator would likely eliminate the subject. Perhaps prudence suggests we examine the situation personally first." It was dangerous, terribly so. An investigator would execute him for such a misjudgment. Merrick wasn't merely his best scout. The avian possessed an instinct for opportunity that rivaled the most skilled reptilian trader. If anything valuable could be extracted from the Terran artifact, Merrick would recognize it. "Agreed. Prepare a boarding party," Thax decided, the choice leaving him uneasy. His compound eyes remained fixed on the image of the Poseidon. This was no longer a simple salvage operation. It had become a delicate navigation through hazardous territory. The docking mechanism hissed as it established contact with the Poseidon. The atmosphere inside the derelict was frigid, smelling of corrosion and stagnant oxygen. Lieutenant Jorah, a Crustian as reliable as a fixed star, was first through, the beam from her energy weapon cutting through the darkness. Thax, Merrick, and 2 reptilian enforcers followed, their substantial forms filling the narrow passage of the ancient warship. The deeper they ventured, the more tension built in Thax's exoskeleton. Ancient warships were deliberately designed as mazes to confuse and repel intruders. Worse, the illumination barely functioned, casting eerie, fluctuating shadows on the damaged metal walls. This felt less like a salvage operation and more like a forensic examination. "Scans indicate a sealed compartment ahead," Merrick whispered, his avian eyes shining in the dim light. "That's the origin of the biological signature. Breach the entrance." "Jorah," Thax commanded, his voice echoing in the silence. The Crustian lieutenant acknowledged, the thermal charge glowing with an ominous crimson light as she placed it against the corroded barrier. The explosion tore through the deteriorating metal with a shriek of tortured alloy, sending sparks showering into the darkness beyond. The 5 aliens surged forward, weapons raised. The compartment was compact and dimly lit. A single cryogenic chamber stood centrally, its transparent covering frosted with age. Inside lay a figure unmistakably Terran, its pale flesh visible beneath tattered remnants of some Arctic military uniform. The cryogenic chamber's cover hissed open, releasing a swirl of freezing vapor. Fax tightened his grip on his weapon. No Terran could survive cryogenic suspension for such duration without profound genetic modification. Whatever occupied that chamber wasn't entirely Terran anymore. Yet the figure that emerged was lean, almost skeletal, the face lined and etched with the weariness of countless battles. The figure blinked azure eyes, adjusting to illumination after eons of dormancy. Then those eyes snapped open, hard, cold, and blazing with barely contained rage. "What abomination is this?" The Terran growled gutturally, in a language Thax couldn't comprehend. Yet the visceral shock of hearing a long-extinct species resonated through his mandibles. His Crustian and reptilian subordinates recoiled in instinctive terror. Only Merrick, with his avian intellect, remained transfixed. "We represent a coalition recovery unit," he stated in Universal Standard, his voice slightly faltering. The Terran's eyes gradually focused on the assembled aliens, confusion evident, then understanding dawned, bringing with it a fury so potent the atmosphere seemed charged with it. "Alien vermin," the Terran snarled, the language shifting seamlessly into Universal Standard though rough and accented from disuse. Before any could react, the Terran lunged forward, a primal howl of anger erupting from his throat. Thax had witnessed warriors charge into battle driven by fear or righteous indignation, but the Terran's attack wasn't strategic or even irrational. It was a maelstrom of raw, desperate hatred, every strike designed to kill or maim. Jorah, the unfortunate vanguard, was caught unprepared. The Terran's fist smashed into her carapace, denting her exoskeleton and sending her hurtling backward with a strangled gasp. The reptilian guards responded, their massive energy weapons discharging with thunderous roars. The Terran was a blur, however, dodging and weaving through the lethal zone with impossible speed for someone recently awakened from extended hibernation. One reptilian screamed as the Terran, with seemingly inhuman strength, lifted him by his armored collar and hurled him into his companion, both aliens collapsing in a tangle of limbs and weaponry. "Neutralize him," Thax roared, horrified, and captivated equally. This wasn't merely a relic, a diminishing spark from history. The Terran was a catastrophic explosion of violence. Merrick finally shook himself from his astonishment, activating a switch on his gauntlet that generated a disruption field designed to immobilize targets. The field enveloped the Terran, the crackling energy causing him to stumble. He howled in defiance, eyes blazing with a primal intensity that made Thax's carapace tremble. The disruptor whined, straining against the sheer force of the Terran's determination. For one terrifying moment, it seemed he would overcome it, then his body convulsed, and he collapsed to the floor, breathing harshly. Thax approached cautiously, every instinct urging him to obliterate the subdued Terran. Yet curiosity battled that primitive fear. This wasn't some battle-crazed berserker. Despite the fury and impossible strength, there was a glimmer of calculation in the Terran's eyes, a tactical awareness that suggested more than mindless rage. "Restrain him," he ordered, his mandibles clicking nervously. He had discovered something potentially explosive, a wild variable that could alter the very foundations of galactic power. The ghosts of Terran civilization were not easily banished, it seemed. They bound the Terran in heavy-duty restraints, the once formidable warrior now subdued and glaring venomously at his captors. Back aboard the recovery vessel in a hastily adapted holding cell, Thax confronted the captured anomaly. The Terran had ceased struggling, instead studying his surroundings with the steely gaze of a cornered predator. Identify yourself, Fax demanded, his voice amplified by the holding cell's acoustics. Major Alexander Corvus, Planetary Defense Fleet, Terra. The man spat, the words carrying significance that Fax could sense despite not grasping their complete context. Memory stirred, fragments of ancient records sketching an image of a proud, warlike species that stubbornly defended their single star system. Terra is gone. Terrans are extinct, Fax stated bluntly. This harsh reality formed the cornerstone of the coalition. If this individual proved otherwise, the ramifications would be immense. Absolutely false, Major Corvus snarled. We fought you alien scum for every fragment of territory. You may have won the conflict, but our species endures. Fax exchanged uneasy glances with Merrick. He'd anticipated finding a delusional relic, a survivor driven mad by isolation. This was something altogether different, a defiant ember smoldering amid the ashes of history. How did you survive? Merrick inquired, avian curiosity apparent. Corvus studied them, his gaze lingering on the unfamiliar bird-like features of the second-in-command. Cryogenic malfunction. Appears I overslept through entire eras, he replied with grim humor lacing his voice. His words were measured now, the initial explosion of rage subsiding beneath a cold layer of calculation. What intentions do you harbor, Commander? Fax needed information, needed to formulate a strategy. If Corvus escaped, reported to some unknown Terran remnant, it would be catastrophic. Corvus emitted a bitter laugh. My intentions. Survival. Gathering intelligence. Perhaps securing some justified retribution your kind enjoys preaching about. His eyes narrowed. First, I require knowledge. How long remained suspended? What transformations occurred? The question hovered, weighted with implications. It represented a strategic inquiry, not mere inquisitiveness. Fax recognized that revealing excessive information risked empowering the Terran, who would exploit every fragment of intelligence to his advantage. Yet keeping him ignorant was equally dangerous. This wasn't a simple curiosity to be examined. It was a tactical mind emerging from self-imposed exile. He turned toward Merrick, the avian's features composed thoughtfully. Second, what protocols exist for such situations? None exist, Merrick admitted. No precedent exists. An investigator will eliminate everything, remove all variables. An option preserved, Fax muttered. No alien in their rational mind would risk the consequences if knowledge about surviving Terrans circulated. Yet the concept of extinguishing this tenacious spark, this echo of a vanished warrior race, troubled him profoundly. Corvus wasn't merely a relic. He represented a wild variable introduced into a carefully equilibrated galactic equation. He might provide insight into this extinct species, or ignite catastrophic conflict. A subtle movement captured his attention. The Terran, despite his bindings, had shifted with unnatural grace, testing his restraints. Even captive, he exuded an aura of coiled menace. You won't free yourself, Terran, Fax declared, projecting confidence he didn't entirely possess. Probably accurate, Corvus conceded, amusement flickering in his eyes. But I might incapacitate several of your companions. The veiled threat carried sufficient weight to make the reptilian guards bristle defensively. Listen, Fax began carefully, considering his words. Many cycles have passed since the war. Your people vanished, your planet too, he concluded. Pain flickered behind the Terran's defiance, grief perhaps, or the phantom echo of survivor's guilt. And this coalition, you alien monsters, Corvus spat, regaining his composure with alarming rapidity. Fax sensed the Terran was provoking him, searching for vulnerability, seeking any weakness he could exploit. He decided on calculated honesty, the optimal strategy available. The coalition represents an alliance of species, he explained, observing Corvus's reaction closely. The Crustians, avians, reptilians, and several others, established after the conflict's conclusion, designed to prevent another conflict of similar magnitude. His carapace tightened uncomfortably. The war itself remained forbidden subject matter, mere mention sufficient to activate the purge protocols of the ever-vigilant investigators. Corvus's eyes, previously blazing with fury, now revealed mixed disbelief and suspicion. An alliance? You expect me to believe that? He scoffed, voice trailing suggestively. This moment represented a crossroads. Fax faced a critical decision. He could maintain protocol, allow the Terran to languish in isolation, alert the investigators, and have them erase the entire incident from existence. Yet curiosity, fueled by Merrick's earlier comments, persisted. History contains complexity, Terran. Fax admitted, the acknowledgement strange from his mandibles. Transgressions occurred universally. He pushed boundaries, navigating dangerous territory. This conversation alone might subject him to investigative scrutiny. Yet the defiance of this long-dead soldier ignited something within him. Surprise briefly crossed Corvus's features, a crack in his armor of hatred. "No falsehoods?" he asked, voice laden with bitter sarcasm. "Perhaps greater mysteries exist concerning this transformed galaxy, Major Corvus," Merrick interjected, his tone smooth and composed. Fax realized the second-in-command would assume the role of confidant for the Terran, a clever, dangerous stratagem, a calculated risk. Corvus studied the alien beings, examining the strange creature before him. "Very well," he barked tersely. "Speak." Information began flowing. The establishment of the coalition, treaties binding formerly warring factions into semblance of peace, the delicate balance of commerce and political maneuvering maintaining galactic stability. Merrick spoke cautiously, filtering information, crafting a narrative designed to intrigue Corvus while protecting vital secrets. The Terran listened initially with obvious skepticism, then with reluctant fascination, his anger subsiding, replaced by clinical detachment as he analyzed the galactic situation. This wasn't mere idle curiosity. This represented a warrior assessing new battlefield conditions. "So," Corvus rumbled after prolonged silence, "Terra vanished. Humanity scattered, hunted, or simply concealed. You aliens resolved your differences, constructed yourselves a pleasant sanctuary." He emitted a bitter laugh. "Tell me, do you rest peacefully knowing what price was paid?" Fax recoiled, instinctively outraged at the accusation, but Merrick raised a feathered appendage, silencing him. "No," the avian acknowledged, his voice devoid of customary diplomacy. "None sleep peacefully, Major Corvus. Every principal species within the coalition bears responsibility for past actions, the cost of continued existence." Corvus surveyed their faces, the defiance in his eyes diminishing slightly. He had anticipated gloating, celebration of his people's downfall. Finding guilt instead clearly unsettled him. "Is that remorse I detect, Steckend?" His voice mocked, though less sharply than before. "Major," Merrick corrected, "an awareness that such sacrifices shouldn't prove meaningless. We constructed the coalition promising improved future, avoiding bloodshed from previous eras." "Noble sentiments," Corvus sneered, yet his posture shifted. No longer resembling a caged beast, he appeared to evaluate them with newfound calculation. "And should someone destabilize your vessel, disrupt your delicate harmony?" Fax and Merrick exchanged silent communication. The Terran wasn't referring to himself anymore. His mind raced, seeking vulnerabilities, pressure points. "Commander Fax." The shouts interrupted their exchange. A reptilian guard stood at the holding cell entrance, panic etched across his scaled features. "Urgent transmission from headquarters, highest priority." Apprehension permeated the confined space, abruptly terminating Corvus's speculation. Headquarters involvement signaled trouble, the variety that might bury this entire incident and its inconvenient Terran beneath layers of protocol and bureaucracy. "Establish connection," Fax ordered, mandibles working nervously beneath his protective covering. This moment would reveal whether their gamble had been exposed, with consequences descending upon them. A holographic projection materialized, the stern visage of Investigator Kelos filling the space with an aura of frigid authority. "Commander Thax," the investigator's smooth voice conveyed veiled suspicion. "You reported discovering something extraordinary." Thax hesitated momentarily before responding. "Affirmative, Investigator. A Terran survivor aboard abandoned battleship from previous conflict era, the Poseidon." Surprise rippled through the cramped compartment, even Corvus's hardened features displaying momentary shock. If his initial awakening represented metaphorical earthquake, an investigator's presence elevated stakes exponentially. Functional. Kelos's compound eyes narrowed, an unsettlingly insect-like gesture. "The Terran remained in cryogenic suspension," Merrick explained, maintaining composure despite escalating tension. "Physically intact. Mental state uncertain due to extended isolation. Protocol for such scenarios remains unambiguous," Investigator Kelos declared, voice flattening into cold monotone. "Eliminate the anomaly. The Coalition cannot jeopardize stability for single relic." Thax anticipated this directive. No investigator would risk potential Terran resurgence during their supervision. Yet he hesitated, visualizing the Terran warrior, defiant, cunning, sharing collective guilt. "Investigator," Thax began, then paused, seeking appropriate phrasing. "The Terran, Major Corvus, displays advanced combat and strategic awareness. His interrogation might yield valuable insight into Terra's military capabilities we could employ to strengthen our defenses." Kelos interrupted him sharply. "You exceed authority, Commander. The Terran represents broken isolation, echo of vanished race. You would endanger the entire Coalition for shadow." Corvus shifted within his restraints, amusement dancing in his cold eyes. The investigator's dismissal represented both reprieve and insult. The Terran, the broken shadow of extinct species, watched his value diminish further. Perhaps that offered unexpected advantage. "Perhaps the investigator speaks accurately," Merrick suggested, his avian mind perpetually seeking opportunity. "Perhaps this Terran merely represents damaged relic, a relic warranting examination before disposal." "Intriguing," Investigator Kelos mused, multifaceted eyes shifting toward Corvus's bound form. Investigators weren't renowned for compassion, but they maintained methodical, morbidly curious pursuit of security. "Living archive from extinct era," Merrick continued persuasively. "With appropriate persuasion, the Terran might reveal Terra's tactical doctrines, vulnerabilities in fleet deployment, technological secrets, intelligence treasure trove." Investigator, given proper methodology. Kelos studied Corvus critically. The Terran appeared physically weakened, spirit battered by isolation and shock. Yet defiance remained, that dangerous, calculating intensity that Thax observed smoldering despite captivity. "Acceptable," the investigator declared, surprising everyone present. "I shall dispatch specialist team for thorough assessment. Meanwhile, Commander Thax, maintain maximum security for this artifact. Any breach constitutes treason, treated accordingly." The transmission terminated abruptly, leaving chilling silence. Thax exhaled vapor that lingered like ghostly apparition. He had gambled the Coalition's fate upon a dead man's unbroken determination. Corvus, the relic, observed proceedings with predatory gleam. "So," he rasped, defiance returning forcefully, "which fortunate individual attempts breaking me?" The specialist team arrived with unsettling efficiency. Thax observed sleek investigative vessel docking against their recovery ship, disgorging quartet of figures radiating cold detachment. The team leader belonged to alien species unfamiliar to Thax, an arachnid being with 8 multifaceted eyes gleaming ominously. "Greetings, Commander Thax," the creature's voice crackled through communication link. "I am Interrogator Primary Zeth. Allow me to manage this specimen." Zeth's team swiftly descended upon the holding area, ignoring Corvus's defiant protests as they removed his restraints, replacing them with advanced bindings pulsing with ominous energy. Merrick moved to object, but Thax restrained him subtly. They balanced precariously already. Open interference with investigators guaranteed annihilation. This direction, Fax indicated, gesturing toward the airlock where their visitors awaited. While curiosity persisted, he couldn't deny relief at transferring the volatile relic to professionals. Major Corvus offered final rebellious glare before disappearing, absorbed into the stark investigative vessel. As their unwelcome passengers departed with the walking firestorm, Merrick finally spoke. "This represents madness, Commander. We've unleashed something." He shook his head wearily. Perhaps, Fax admitted, the image of Corvus's burning defiance imprinted in his memory. Or perhaps we've merely opened entrance. The Coalition has grown complacent during peacetime. They needed reminder that monsters exist beyond their borders, and potentially within. His gaze settled on the empty void where the Poseidon had hung, the phantom vessel that delivered stark awakening. The Coalition represented House of Cards, delicately balanced upon foundation of deceptions. The Tyran, damaged or otherwise, represented wild variable violently introduced into equation. Whether chaos or renaissance would follow remained uncertain.